like, so I like your interview with the Sway House guys, right? Like Josh Richards and
Yeah.
So you went to like the Sway House?
Yeah. I mean, I've been good friends with Michael Grew and like the co-founder of Sway and Talent X.
Yeah.
They actually just had an acquisition like 3 days ago to Wreck-It Global, which is like this big gaming company. But I've known Michael for probably 3-4 years. Awesome friend of mine. Like he's helped me get my interview with Tillman Fertitta, who's the billionaire owner of the Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
He invited me to the dinner with Tillman Fertitta where I met Larry King's son. Then I ended up interviewing Larry King. So like he's always
you are so good at real world networking. Like I got to get out there and go to dinner with like some of these people. Like I'm always like,
dude,
like,
that whole story is crazy. It was like I interviewed Tillman Fertitta on Zoom, you know, and he was promoting his book called Shut Up and Listen. And this was back 2019, like October 2019. After the interview, like 2 weeks later, I'm living in Arizona at the time. Michael hits me up and he was helping in with book promos. He's like, "Hey, do you want to come out to a dinner with Tillman Fertitta?" They're having like 30 people there at the Mastro's Beverly Hills to, you know, for everyone that helped promote his book. I was like, absolutely. My good friend and best friend and business partner, Kieran O'Brien, and I go out there. And you know, he owns Mastro's. So it's like the Tillman Fertitta service. There's like 30 people there, great people. Everyone's going around the room introducing themselves. And Tillman, one of my best friend Kieran that's there with me, he's sitting at the other end of the table. He sits next to this guy named Chance. And going around the room, Tillman's like, "Chance, like, you know, stand up. I just want to say thank you so much. It was a pleasure being on your father's show today." And Chance King. And I just want to say it's, you know, it's such a pleasure always collaborating with your father. Thank you so much. And then Kieran's like running over to me like, "Dude, this is Larry King's son. Like, you should definitely like talk to him and meet him." And ironically, I was having an event the weekend after that. So, you know, I ended up just walking up to Chance, getting to know him a little bit. We exchanged contact. I'm telling him that I'm having an event next week with Rob Dyrdek and all these cool people. And, you know, we just get connected. He comes out to my event the next weekend, show him a good time. And that was like October 2019. And I ended up interviewing Larry King December 2019. And this is the craziest part. In between the time of meeting Chance and like even asking to see if his father would love to come on my show, like, you know, I don't typically like to ask for those type of things, but I ironically, this before I lived in LA, I was just visiting, was at the Century City Mall walking around, and guess who I run into randomly? Larry King.
Are you serious?
He's like,
and then you can say, I know your son and stuff like that.
Bingo.
Boom.
So, and I like walking people through the story because some people might have seen that and let him, you know, just pass and not say anything. He's in his wheelchair, you know, he's with 2 other people. And I just walk up to him, you know, this is before COVID, end of 2019,
right.
Walk up to him and Larry, like, my name's Casey Adams. I met your son, Chance King, like 2 weeks ago at Tillman Fertitta dinner. Just wanted to introduce myself and say hello. And he's, "Oh, that's amazing. Like Chance, you know, Chance is amazing. I'm so glad that you guys connected." We take a quick selfie. I sent it to Chance. I'm like, "Yo, guess what I just ran into?" And it's just hilarious. But
that's awesome.
During the end of October, early November, I'm talking to Chance. I'm like, "You know, Chance, such a pleasure getting to know you the last couple of months. What are the odds that you think your father would, you know, come on my podcast? It'd be such an honor to have him on the show and to talk about his legacy and just who he is as a person." And, you know, Chance was looking into who I am and seeing that I had a podcast for years. Like, it wasn't my first episode where I was like, "Hey, let me interview your dad."
You have credibility, and you had a selfie with him, and you met him from before. So you weren't looking like some guy just coming in being like, "Do my podcast." Yeah.
So like, we ended up talking. He ended up running it by him. He's like, you know, he's just coming off a stroke. He's not doing the best health wise. He's 86 at the time. Ends up saying like, "Can't do it right now." He's not doing that well. Wasn't doing that many interviews. So like towards Thanksgiving 2019, like I always like to send people like selfie videos, say I'm grateful for you, for the people that I've met that year or whatever.
So good.
I end up sending one a Chance, hitting him up again, you know, a couple of weeks later, like, "Hey, like, you know, like I'd love to just circle back whenever you believe it'd be great timing for him to come on the show. Let me know. Like, this is something that I'd love to make happen." And he goes, I remember I was taking off from Pittsburgh, heading back to Arizona from visiting my family in Virginia. And he was like, "Hey, like, he's down to do it. Let me know when you're going to be back in LA in the next 2-3 weeks and we can set it up." I'm like, "December 10th, I'll be there." And boom, got it locked in. And that was the day I interviewed him, December 10th, 2019. And like that whole moment and build up to that, like looking back, like you would have no idea how that would unravel, but just being able to look back and tell that story is so important to me, not only because he's not with us anymore, you know, rest in peace to him.
R.I.P.
But,
for sure.
And like, but just like the story and the journey about the timing. This is the craziest thing to me. I interviewed him in December 2019, and like February, March 2020 was when COVID started happening, and people aren't going out as much, and him being 87 years old
in person, and he doesn't do a lot of interviews. He's usually the interviewer.
Yeah. So, and we did it at his studio in like the legendary Larry King room. So based on what I know, I was the last person to interview him in person at his studio, like publicly on air that you can see anywhere. And that isn't like necessarily like the most important thing to me, but it's just such a moment. And
you'll always have that. He's the most legendary interviewer, probably of all time, possibly. And
100%.
And you did his last interview with him in person. I mean, dude, keep talking about that. Keep putting it in your NFT. I mean, that's powerful. And like, dude, it has a cool story with how you connected it. Shows your networking skills. Like that's
for sure. So I mean, it's a story, but it's also knowing when to ask, knowing what makes sense, and most importantly, like being genuinely curious about who he is. Right. Like I was so excited to speak with him, and one of my friends asked me the other day. He was like, out of everyone you've ever interviewed, like what's the biggest lesson that you've taken away to this day? And I always bring up Larry King, and I say, like, he has this quote. It's, I've never learned anything while I was talking. And he talks about curiosity, and like those two simple philosophies of knowing when to listen and learning through that process and just staying curious about life. Like, he's 87 years old, still doing interviews, still having shows, still talking to people.
He's the man. He's been like the old guy joke for like 20 years, and he embraces it. He's so cool.
Yeah. So like that whole ideology of embracing your curiosity and just loving what you do, like those are things that I will never forget, and something that I can, when he did unfortunately pass, like I was rewatching that interview with him and just like thinking to myself, like, wow, like it's so cool that I can look back on this moment. And I think that's also such a great thing about podcasting and just interviewing and documenting your journey in general is like,
it's my favorite. That might be my favorite part. Yeah.
Cause like, I'm only 20 years old right now. Right. I've only been doing this for 3 years, but like out of all the people I've interviewed, like in 10, 20, 30 years, like those interviews are going to get, I guess you could say like OG, or
you can mint them. You can mint them as an NFT.
Yeah, for sure.